Close your eyes for a moment and imagine this: it's 3 a.m., and the world is asleep. Your house is swallowed by an oppressive silence, broken only by the faint buzz of your computer. You're alone, or at least you think you are, scrolling through Reddit's deepest, darkest threads, places where people confess their nightmares, their secrets, their terrors. These aren't just stories. They're glimpses into something real, something that lingers in the shadows of our world. Tonight, we're plunging into 5 of the most disturbing Reddit horror stories ever shared. These tales, posted by ordinary people, or so they claim, will grip your soul and refuse to let go. Each one is a descent into fear, longer and more twisted than the last, crafted to keep you awake for hours. So, lock every door, dim every light, and brace yourself. Once we start, there's no turning back. Hit that subscribe button, ring the bell, and let's step into the abyss together. Welcome to the horror. Story 1: The Man in the Polaroid. Our first story comes from r/True Scary Stories, posted by a user called Shutter_click99. They titled it "The Man in the Polaroid." For years ago, my life fell apart. I was 28, stuck in a toxic relationship with my ex, Ethan, who'd been gaslighting me for years. My job as a freelance graphic designer was barely paying the bills, and my mental health was crumbling. I needed an escape, somewhere to rebuild myself. That's when I found the house, a dilapidated, 2-story farmhouse in rural Ohio, listed for next to nothing on a shady real estate site. The ad was vague: fixer-upper, secluded, sold as is. I didn't care. Seclusion sounded like salvation. I drove out to see it on a gray October afternoon. The house sat at the end of a dirt road, swallowed by fields of tall, brittle grass that hissed in the wind. The exterior was peeling, its once white paint flaking like dead skin. The windows were clouded with grime, and the front porch sagged under rotting boards. Inside, the air was heavy, smelling of damp wood and something sour, like old wine gone bad. The floors creaked under my sneakers, and the wallpaper, faded floral patterns from the 70s, curled at the edges, revealing black mold. It was a wreck, but it was mine. I signed the papers that week, packed my camera gear, and moved in, determined to start over. I've always loved photography. It's my anchor, the one thing that keeps me grounded. I'd spend hours exploring the property with my vintage Polaroid SX70, snapping shots of the eerie beauty around me, the rusted mailbox leaning like a drunk, the cracked attic window catching the sunset, the gnarled oak tree in the backyard, its branches twisting like skeletal fingers. The house felt alive in those early days, whispering its history through every groan of its beams. I told myself it was charming, not creepy. The first month was uneventful. Just me settling in, painting walls, and dodging calls from Ethan, who wouldn't stop texting apologies. But one rainy afternoon in November, I decided to explore the attic. The pull-down ladder groaned as I climbed, and the air above was thick with dust, stinging my eyes. My flashlight beam cut through the gloom, revealing stacks of mildewed boxes, a broken rocking chair, and a cracked mirror leaning against the wall. In the far corner, half hidden under a tarp, was a wooden chest. Its lid was carved with strange symbols, swirls and sharp angles that didn't look like any language I knew. A rusted padlock dangled, barely holding it shut. Scrawled across the top in faded black marker were the words "Keep Out." My pulse quickened. I should have left it alone, but curiosity burned hotter than fear. I pried the lock off with a crowbar from my toolbox. The chest creaked open, releasing a puff of stale air that smelled like decay. Inside were dozens of Polaroids, their edges yellowed and curling like dead leaves. I sifted through them, my fingers trembling. Most showed the house from decades ago, empty rooms with dated furniture, a family posing stiffly in the living room, their smiles forced. A few captured the backyard, the oak tree younger but still menacing. Then I found the photo. It was a shot of the backyard at twilight, the sky bruised purple. The oak tree loomed, its shadow stretching across the grass. In the far corner, almost out of frame, stood a figure. He was tall, too tall, his limbs stretched like taffy, unnaturally thin. His head was tilted at an odd angle, and his face, it wasn't there. Just a smooth, pale blur, like someone had erased it with a smudged eraser. My stomach twisted. I told myself it was a trick of the light, maybe a double exposure or a defect in the film. But the figure felt wrong, like it didn't belong in the world. I shoved the photo back in the chest and slammed it shut, my heart hammering. I tried to laugh it off. Old houses have creepy stuff, right? But that night, sleep wouldn't come. The house felt different, heavier, like it was holding its breath. Every creak of the floorboards sounded like footsteps pacing just out of sight. The wind outside howled, and I swore it carried a voice, low and guttural, calling my name. I lay in bed, clutching my phone, scrolling Reddit to distract myself, but the faceless man's image burned in my mind. The next morning, I went outside to clear my head. The air was crisp, the grass damp with dew. I decided to recreate the Polaroid to prove it was nothing, just a glitch, not a ghost. I stood in the exact spot, framing the oak tree through my camera's viewfinder, and snapped the shot. The Polaroid whirred, spitting out the photo. I watched it develop, my breath catching. The tree was there, the sky clear. And so was he. The faceless man, standing closer now, maybe 20 feet away, his blurry head tilted like he was staring right at me. The grass around him was flattened in a perfect circle, like he'd been there all night. I stumbled back to the house, slamming the door. My hand shook as I tore the photo in half and burned it in the kitchen sink. The flames hissed, and the smell of melting plastic filled the room, but it didn't erase the chill crawling up my spine. I called my friend Mia, a photographer in Cleveland, and told her everything. She laughed, saying old Polaroids can develop weird artifacts, but her voice wavered when I described the faceless man. She told me to leave the photo alone and focus on work. I tried, but the house wouldn't let me. That night, the noises started. Footsteps in the attic, slow and deliberate. Thump. 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 They'd stop when I held my breath, then start again, closer. I locked my bedroom door and wedged a chair under the knob, but the sounds followed me into my dreams. I saw him, the faceless man, standing at the edge of the field, his head tilting further each time I blinked, until it was nearly upside down. Days blurred into weeks. The noises grew worse, scratching at the walls, like nails dragging through plaster. Whispers seeped through the floorboards, too faint to understand but loud enough to keep me awake. I stopped eating, stopped working. My camera sat untouched, but one morning, I found a new Polaroid on my kitchen table. It showed me sleeping in bed, my face gaunt, eyes half open. At the foot of my bed stood the faceless man, his blurred form leaning over me, one hand hovering above my chest. My camera was still in its locked case. I called the police, my voice hoarse from crying. 2 officers came, a gruff man named Hargrove and a younger woman, Officer Tate. They searched the house, finding no signs of a break-in. The attic was empty, the chest still there, its lid shut tight. Hargrove suggested I was stressed, maybe hallucinating from lack of sleep. Tate looked uneasy, though, her eyes lingering on the symbols carved into the attic beams. They left, promising to patrol the area, but I knew they didn't believe me. I packed a bag and drove to a motel 50 miles away, the Crestview Inn, a neon-lit dive off the highway. For a week, I felt safe, though sleep was still a stranger. I researched the house online, digging through local archives on my laptop. I found a 1973 article about a family of 4 who lived there, a couple, their daughter, and a young son. They vanished without a fire swept through, leaving no bodies behind. Locals called the place cursed, tied to a 19th century drifter who'd squatted on the land. He was obsessed with capturing spirits in photographs, claiming they lived in the oak tree. He disappeared after a neighbor accused him of witchcraft. Then, one night at the motel, I woke to a soft click. My Polaroid camera, which I'd left in my car, was on my nightstand. A fresh photo lay beside it, still warm. It showed me sleeping in the motel bed, the room dark except for a sliver of moonlight. The faceless man stood in the doorway, his form clearer now, his head tilted so far it touched his shoulder. I screamed, throwing the photo across the room, and checked out at dawn, driving another 200 miles to a friend's apartment in Columbus. I thought distance would save me, but the photos kept coming. A week ago, I got a package at my friend's place. No return address, no postage, just a plain manila envelope. Inside was a Polaroid. It showed me sitting in her living room, scrolling Reddit on my laptop, oblivious. In the reflection of my screen, he was there, his faceless head inches from mine, like he was reading over my shoulder. Last night, I heard footsteps in her attic. Slow. Deliberate. I'm out of places to run. I don't know what he is, a ghost, a demon, or something worse. The Polaroids are piling up, each one showing him closer, his form sharpening. I'm posting this because I need answers. Has anyone seen him? Shutter_click99 hasn't posted since. Their account was wiped from Reddit. Story 2, The Sound in the Walls. This next story comes from r/nosleep, posted by a user called Quiet House Please. They titled it, The Sound in the Walls. My name's Alex. I'm 30, and for the last 5 years, I've lived in a rundown apartment in Detroit, a place called the Crestwood Arms. It's not much, a crumbling brick building on the edge of town, where the streetlights buzz and the sidewalks are choked with weeds. I picked it because it was cheap and quiet, a place to hide after my life fell apart. My divorce from Lauren, my high school sweetheart, left me raw. She said I was too distant, too obsessed with my IT job, fixing other people's computers while ignoring our marriage. She wasn't wrong. When she left, taking our dog, Max, with her, I needed somewhere to disappear. The Crestwood was perfect, no neighbors knocking, no questions asked. Just me, my laptop, and the hum of the city outside. The apartment's on the top floor, 4B, a one-bedroom with thin walls and a view of a boarded-up warehouse. The living room's cluttered with my stuff, empty coffee mugs, a second-hand couch that sags in the middle, a desk piled with cables and old hard drives. The walls are stained, yellowed from years of cigarette smoke and water leaks, with patches of bubbled paint that look like faces if you stare too long. The air always smells faintly of mildew, no matter how much I clean. It's not home, but it's mine. Or it was, until 6 months ago, when the sound started. It began with a tap. Just one, soft, like a finger knocking on wood, coming from the wall behind my bed. I was working a late shift, troubleshooting a server crash for a client, my headphones blasting lo-fi to stay focused. I thought it was nothing, old buildings creak, pipes groan, right? The Crestwoods from the 1940s, a relic that should have been condemned years ago. I ignored it and went to bed, the tap fading into the usual nighttime hum. Distant sirens, the radiator's hiss, the occasional shout from the street below. But the next night, it came again. Tap. 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 Louder, more deliberate, like someone was testing the wall's strength. It was always around 2 a.m., when the world felt dead. I'd lie there, eyes wide, staring at the ceiling's cracked plaster, my heart thumping in sync with the sound. I told myself it was mice or a loose pipe, but it didn't feel random. It had a rhythm, like a code or a game. Tap tap. Pause. Tap. Pause. Tap tap tap. I started counting the beats, trying to find a pattern, but it had stopped the second I focused too hard, like it knew I was listening. I mentioned it to my landlord, Carl, a chain-smoking guy in his 60s with a permanent scowl. He grunted, said it was just the building settling, and sent a pest control guy named Rico to check. Rico poked around, set some traps, and found nothing, no droppings, no nests, no chewed wires. He shrugged, said I was hearing things, and left me with a bill for $75. Carl told me to stop whining or move out. I couldn't afford to move, so I stayed, but the tapping didn't stop. It got worse. By the second week, it was every night. I stopped sleeping, my eyes bloodshot from staring at the wall. I'd press my ear to the drywall, holding my breath, but the sound would vanish, mocking me. Then, one night, I heard something new. A whisper. Low, raspy, like someone trying to speak through a mouthful of dust. It came from the same wall, right behind my headboard. I couldn't make out words, but the tone was desperate, almost pleading. My skin prickled, and I yanked my ear away, my pulse roaring. I told myself it was a neighbor, maybe someone I'd never noticed, but I'm on the top floor, and the apartment next to mine, for C, has been vacant since I moved in. I started avoiding my bedroom, crashing on the couch with the TV on low, hoping the noise would drown it out. It didn't. The tapping followed me, fainter but still there, like it was burrowing through the walls. I stopped inviting my coworker, Jamal, over for our usual pizza and beer nights. I stopped answering Lauren's texts. She'd been trying to reconnect, saying she missed Max and wanted to talk. I couldn't deal with her, not when my apartment felt like it was closing in. A month in, I bought a recorder app for my phone, determined to prove I wasn't crazy. I set it up by the wall every night, letting it run until dawn. The first few recordings were useless, just static and my own restless tossing. But one morning, I played back the latest file, and my stomach dropped. The tapping was there, clear and rhythmic. Then, the whisper. Slow, deliberate, like it was speaking just for me. Let me out. Over and over, a voice that wasn't human, too deep, too broken, like it was scraped from the bottom of a grave. I played it again, my hands shaking so bad I nearly dropped my phone. I showed the recording to Jamal during a Zoom call. He's a skeptic, always joking about my haunted apartment, but I thought he'd hear it. He frowned, tilting his head. Man, it's just static. You need sleep, Alex. I checked the file again, same recording, same timestamp, but the voice was gone, replaced by a low hum. I didn't understand. It was there, I heard it. Jamal suggested I see a therapist, said I was stressed from the divorce. I nodded, but I knew it wasn't me. It was the walls. The tapping turned to scratching by the third month. Sharp, frantic, like nails clawing at the drywall, trying to break through. It wasn't just behind my bed anymore, it moved. One night, it came from the living room wall, near my desk. The next, it was in the bathroom, echoing off the tiles while I showered. I'd freeze, soap dripping into my eyes, listening as the scratches circled me. I stopped using the bathroom light, scared I'd see something in the mirror. My life shrank to work, coffee, and the sounds. I was losing weight, my clothes hanging loose, my reflection gaunt and hollow. I started researching the building online, desperate for answers. The Crestwood had a dark history. A 1978 article from the Detroit Free Press mentioned a missing kid, Tommy Grayson, age 6, last seen playing in the hallway on the 4th floor. His parents were frantic, but the police found nothing, no witnesses, no body. The case went cold. Locals whispered about the landlord's brother, a recluse named Edgar, who lived in the basement back then. He was arrested after Tommy vanished, ranting about the walls wanting the boy. They locked him in an asylum, and he died there a year later. The article included a grainy photo of Tommy, big eyes, freckles, a gap-toothed smile. I couldn't stop staring at it. I asked Carl about Tommy. His face darkened, and he stubbed out his cigarette. Old rumors, he snapped. Building's fine. Mind your business. But his hand shook, and he wouldn't meet my eyes. I didn't push it. Instead, I went to the basement, a damp maze of rusted pipes and flickering bulbs. I found Edgar's old room, a cinderblock cell with a single cot. The walls were scratched, deep gouges forming words I couldn't read. In the corner, under a pile of moldy blankets, was a child's toy, a plastic fire truck, faded but intact. My chest tightened. I left it there and ran upstairs, locking my door. The scratching got louder, more aggressive. It wasn't just at night now, it followed me through the day, faint but constant, like a pulse in the building. I'd hear it while eating cereal, the spoon frozen halfway to my mouth. It'd wake me from rare naps, clawing at the edges of my dreams. I started seeing things, shadows flitting across my peripheral vision, too small to be human but too deliberate to be nothing. My laptop glitched, opening files I hadn't touched, all blank except for one word, help. I couldn't take it anymore. One night, fueled by exhaustion and Red Bull, I grabbed a hammer from my toolbox and attacked the wall behind my bed, where the sounds were loudest. Plaster crumbled, dust choking the air. I swung until my arms burned, carving a jagged hole big enough to crawl through. I shone my flashlight inside, expecting wires or pipes. It was empty, a hollow space, dark and endless. At the bottom, half buried in debris, was a child's shoe. Leather, tiny, so old it crumbled when I touched it. My breath hitched. I reached deeper, my fingers brushing something else, a crumpled piece of paper, yellowed and brittle. I unfolded it, my flashlight shaking. In childish scrawl, it read, "They won't let me go." I dropped the paper, scrambling back. The air in the room turned cold, my breath fogging. That night, the whispers stopped. The scratching didn't. It was everywhere now, under the floor, in the ceiling, behind every wall. I'd hear it crawling, a weight dragging itself through the building, always just out of sight. I taped up the hole, but it didn't help. The scratches grew deeper, gouging patterns into the drywall, swirls, lines, almost like a face if I squinted. I called Father Reyes, a pastor Jamal knew from his church. He was old, with kind eyes and a voice like gravel. I told him everything, the sounds, the shoe, Tommy's story. He came the next day, carrying a Bible and a vial of holy water. We stood in my living room, the air thick with tension. He prayed, his words steady at first, but the scratching started mid-sentence, louder than ever, like it was mocking him. The lights flickered, and the temperature plummeted. Father Reyes faltered, his face pale. He whispered, "This isn't a ghost," and left without finishing, promising to pray for me. I never heard from him again. I went to my neighbor, Mrs. Kowalski, a widow in 3A who'd lived here for decades. She was frail, her apartment smelling of mothballs and tea. I asked about Tommy. Her eyes welled up, and she clutched her rosary. "Poor boy," she said. Edgar was wrong. He'd watched Tommy, muttering about the walls needing him. After Tommy vanished, Edgar screamed they'd taken him inside. She wouldn't say more, just pressed a cross into my hand and told me to leave the Crestwood. I tried. I looked for new apartments, but my savings were gone, and my job was shaky from missed deadlines. I was trapped. The scratching followed me everywhere now, even outside. I'd hear it in the grocery store, faint but there, like nails on a chalkboard. I'd see Tommy in my dreams, his face pale, his hands bloody from clawing. He'd whisper my name, saying I was his only way out. I woke with scratches on my arms, red and raw, too deep to be mine. My doctor prescribed antipsychotics, but the pills just made the voices louder. Last week, I woke to scratching on my bedroom door, not outside, but inside. Deep gouges ran down the wood, like someone had clawed it in rage. I grabbed my knife and searched the apartment, finding nothing but my own terrified reflection. The mirror seemed to ripple, and for a second, I saw him, Tommy, standing behind me, his eyes hollow, his mouth open in a silent scream. I blinked, and he was gone. Yesterday, I found a crawlspace in my closet, hidden behind a loose panel I'd never noticed. I crawled inside, my flashlight shaking, the air thick with dust and rot. The space was narrow, barely wide enough for me, but it stretched into darkness. I found more, crayon drawings taped to the walls, stick figures of a boy trapped in a box. A teddy bear, its eyes sewn shut with black thread. And a note, fresh, written in red ink that smelled like copper, "You're mine now. I'm moving out tomorrow. I don't care about the money. I'm staying at a motel tonight, but I'm terrified." The scratching hasn't stopped. It's louder, closer, like it's inside my head. Last night, I woke to a whisper, clearer than ever. "Stay with me, Alex." It wasn't Tommy's voice. It was mine, twisted and wrong. I don't know what's in the walls, but it's not just a boy. It's something older, something that wants me. I'm posting this because I need help. What do I do? It followed me. It's here. Quiet House Police's final post was a single line, "It's not in the walls, it's in me." Their account vanished from Reddit. Some users dug into the Crestwood's history, finding more missing person reports from the 1970s, all children, all tied to the building. Others say it's not a ghost, but something that lives in the spaces between, something that never lets go. Have you ever heard a sound in your home you couldn't explain? Drop your story in the comments below, and let's see if you're brave enough to share. Smash that like button if you're still here, because the next story, it's going to make you to your core. Stick around. Story 3, The Hitchhiker Who Knew My Name. This next tale comes from r/true scary stories, posted by a user called Road Trip Gone Wrong. They titled it, The Hitchhiker Who Knew My Name. My name's Sarah, and I'm 34. For the last 5 years, I've been a delivery driver for a logistics company, hauling packages across Pennsylvania's backroads. It's not glamorous, long hours, endless highways, and a truck that smells like stale coffee and motor oil, but it's how I cope. 2 years ago, my husband, Mark, died in a car accident on I-80. We'd fought that morning, something stupid about bills, and I never got to say sorry. The guilt eats at me, so I drive. The road's my escape, the only place I feel halfway whole. My truck's my home away from home, cluttered with Mark's old flannel shirt, a Polaroid of us at Niagara Falls, and a radio that never quite tunes right. Last November, everything changed. I was on a late-night run through Potter County, a rural stretch where the roads twist through foggy valleys and crumbling barns. It was storming, the kind of rain that turns the world into a gray blur, my wiper slapping uselessly against the windshield. The clock on my dash read 1:03 a.m., and I was 20 miles from the nearest gas station, my eyes burning from staring into the dark. That's when I saw him, a hitchhiker on the shoulder, standing under a flickering streetlight. He was young, maybe 25, wearing a hooded jacket that clung to him, soaked through. His thumb was out, his posture stiff, like he wasn't cold despite the freezing rain. I don't pick up strangers, rule number 1 in this job. Too many stories about drivers getting robbed or worse. But something about him felt pitiful, like he'd been standing there for hours, abandoned. Against every instinct, I slowed my truck, the tires crunching gravel, and rolled down the passenger window. "Need a lift?" I called. He nodded, silent, and climbed into the back seat without a word. The air in the truck turned heavy, like the storm had followed him inside. He smelled wrong, not like rain or sweat, but something sharp, like burnt metal. I glanced at him in the rearview mirror, but his hood shadowed his face, and he kept his head down, staring at his hands. They were pale, too long, his fingers twitching like they couldn't stay still. I shook off the unease and asked, "Where you headed?" His voice was low, hollow, like it came from somewhere deep underground. "Just up the road." The radio crackled, spitting static that drowned out my country playlist. I tried to make small talk to ease the tension. "Nasty night, huh? You from around here?" He didn't answer, just sat there, his fingers tapping a rhythm on his knee, tap tap, pause, tap, mimicking the rain. The silence stretched, thick and suffocating, until he spoke again, unprompted. "You're far from home, Sarah." My heart stopped. My name's Sarah, but I hadn't told him. My name tag was stuffed in the glove box, and I wasn't wearing it. The truck swerved slightly, my hands gripping the wheel. I forced a laugh, my voice shaky. "How'd you know my name?" He lifted his head, and I caught his eyes in the mirror. They were wrong, too big, too dark, like pools of ink that swallowed the light. His lips curled into a smile, showing too many teeth, sharp and uneven. "I've been watching you," he said, his voice curling around the words like smoke. Panic surged, hot and sharp. I slammed on the brakes, the truck skidding on the wet road. "Get out!" I screamed, my voice cracking. He didn't move, just stared, his smile widening until it looked like his face might split. Then, slowly, he opened the door and stepped into the rain, his silhouette dissolving into the fog. I floored it, tires screeching, my breath ragged. I checked the rearview mirror every second, but he was gone, like he'd never been there. I drove straight to a gas station, a neon-lit shell off Route 6, my hands shaking so bad I could barely open the door. The clerk, a bored kid with earbuds, barely looked up as I stumbled in, babbling about the hitchhiker. He shrugged, said I was probably tired. I checked the back seat, muddy footprints stained the floor, smudged but real, leading from the passenger door to nowhere. I called my dispatcher, Carla, a chain-smoking mom of 3 who'd heard every road story. I told her everything, expecting her to laugh. She didn't. "Sarah, don't stop for anyone out there," she said, her voice tight. "That road's bad news." I got home at dawn, a small duplex in Williamsport with creaky floors and a view of a strip mall. I locked every door, checked every window, and collapsed on my couch, Mark's flannel clutched to my chest. But when I walked to my bedroom, I froze. Muddy footprints trailed across my carpet, from the front door to my bed. The locks were untouched, the alarm still set. I called the cops, but they found nothing, no forced entry, no fingerprints. The officer, a guy named Perez, suggested I was stressed, maybe tracking mud myself. I knew better. The next night, I took a different route, avoiding Potter County. But at 1 a.m., he was there again, standing on a different road, same hood, same thumb. I sped past, my heart pounding, but my radio crackled, and his voice came through, clear as day. "Sarah, why won't you stop?" I turned it off, but the static kept humming, his words looping in my head. I pulled into a diner, the kind with sticky tables and fluorescent lights, and sat there until sunrise, nursing coffee. The waitress, an older woman named Duh, noticed my shaking hands. I told her about the hitchhiker, leaving out the name part. She frowned, said locals called that road Race Run, named for a highwayman hanged there in the 1800s. "He picks his travelers," she said, half joking, but her eyes were serious. I started researching. Old newspaper archives mentioned a drifter, Elias Crow, executed in 1847 for robbing and killing travelers on that stretch. Witnesses said he'd whisper their names before striking, like he knew their souls. Locals claimed his spirit haunted the roads, hitching rides with the lonely, stealing pieces of them. I laughed it off, ghost stories are just stories, but the next delivery, I found something under my truck. Carved into the undercarriage were symbols, jagged lines, and circles, like the ones Dot described from old graves near the highway. I showed my mechanic, Eddie, a grizzled guy who'd seen it all. He went pale, said he'd never seen carvings like that, and told me to get my truck blessed. The hitchhiker kept appearing, every few nights, always at 1 a.m. He'd stand on different roads, but always in my path, his hood up, his smile wider each time. Once, I swerved to avoid him, nearly crashing, and found a note tucked under my wiper blade, "I know you, Sarah." The handwriting was sharp, like it was scratched with a nail. I stopped sleeping, my dreams filled with his eyes, black and endless, and Mark's voice, twisted, singing our song, "You Are My Sunshine," through static. A month in, he didn't just appear on the road. I'd see him in my mirrors, sitting in the back seat when it was empty, his head tilted at impossible angles. I'd hear him tapping on the truck's roof, keeping time with my heartbeat. I moved to a motel, the Starlight Inn, 100 miles away, hoping distance would break the cycle. It didn't. One night, I woke to a knock at my door. I peeked through the peephole, he was there, standing in the parking lot, his hood down now. His face wasn't blurred like the first time, it was Mark's face, but wrong, his eyes black, his smile too wide. "Let me in, Sarah," he whispered, his voice echoing inside my skull. I called Carla, sobbing. She drove out, stayed with me, but saw nothing. She made me take a week off, said I was cracking under grief. I went to a therapist, Dr. Nguyen, who prescribed pills for PTSD, saying I was projecting Mark's death onto a stranger. The pills dulled me, but the knocking didn't stop. It followed me home, to my duplex, every night. Tap tap. Pause. Tap. I'd find muddy handprints on my windows, smudged but deliberate, forming words, "mine." Last week, I found Mark's flannel on my bed, folded neatly, but soaked in mud. Inside the pocket was a photo, not the Niagara Falls Polaroid, but a new one, showing me driving, my eyes on the road. In the back seat, he sat, smiling, his hand on my shoulder. I burned it, but the knocking grew louder, shaking the walls. Last night, I heard him through my radio, singing Mark's song, but the words were wrong. You are my shadow, my only shadow. I'm terrified to drive. I'm terrified to stay home. He knows my name, my life, my pain. I don't know if he's Elias Crow, a demon, or something worse. I'm posting this because I need help. He's out there, waiting for me to let him in. Road Trip Gone Wrong hasn't posted since. Their account is gone, like it was never there. Some Redditors think it was a stalker who saw Sarah's name somewhere. Others point to Elias Crow's legend, saying he claims travelers who carry guilt. Have you ever seen something strange on a late-night drive? Share your story in the comments, I want to hear it. Hit that like button if you're still with me, because the next story will make you check every window in your house. Don't go anywhere. Story 4, The Face in the Window. This next story comes from r/paranormal, posted by a user called Nitol88. They titled it, The Face in the Window. My name's Daniel, and I'm 42. 3 years ago, I walked away from everything, my tech job in Albany, my friends, my life, after a mental breakdown burned me out. I was a senior developer, coding apps for startups, but the pressure, the deadlines, and the fake smiles at meetings broke me. Worse, I lost my daughter, Sophie, in a custody battle with my ex-wife, Claire. I wasn't a great dad, too wrapped up in work to notice Sophie growing distant. Claire won full custody, and I spiraled, drowning in whiskey and regret. I needed to start over, somewhere quiet, somewhere I could breathe. That's when I found the cabin. It was a small log cabin in the Adirondack Mountains, a mile from the nearest road, surrounded by pines that blocked out the sun. I bought it sight unseen from a sketchy realtor, using my savings. It was my sanctuary, a one-room shack with a stone fireplace, a creaky loft bed, and windows that rattled in the wind. The air smelled of sap and damp earth, and the only sounds were the creek nearby and the occasional owl. I chopped wood, read old paperbacks, and tried to forget the world. For a while, it worked. Until last winter, when the peace shattered. It started in November, during the first heavy snow. I noticed smudges on my windows, greasy handprints, too big for mine, pressed against the glass like someone had stood outside, staring in. They were faint at first, easy to miss, but they kept reappearing, even after I scrubbed them with vinegar. I'd wake to new ones, sometimes with faint scratches around the frames, like nails had scraped the wood. I told myself it was animals, bears, maybe, or raccoons, but the prints were human, with long, thin fingers that didn't look right. I set up a trail camera, the kind hunters use, pointing at the front window. For a week, it caught nothing, no deer, no coyotes, just snow piling up. But the smudges kept coming, bolder now, covering every window, even the high ones I couldn't reach without a ladder. I started locking my door, something I'd never bothered with out here. The cabin felt less like a sanctuary and more like a trap, its walls closing in as the snow deepened. One night, during a blizzard that buried the cabin in white, I was reading by the fire, some old Stephen King novel, when I heard it. A tap. Soft, deliberate, like a knuckle rapping on the front window. I froze, my book slipping to the floor. The wind screamed outside, but the tap cut through, clear and insistent. Tap. 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 My cabin's in the middle of nowhere, no neighbors, no roads, no reason for anyone to be out there in a storm like that. I grabbed my flashlight, its beam shaking in my hand, and crept to the window. I swept the light across the yard, expecting nothing but snow. The beam caught the pines, their branches sagging under the weight, but no tracks, no movement. I let out a shaky breath, telling myself it was a branch hitting the glass. Then I turned off the flashlight, and my heart stopped. In the window's reflection, lit by the fire behind me, was a face. Pale, with eyes too wide, like they'd been stretched open, and a mouth grinning ear to ear, showing teeth that glinted like bone. It wasn't human, not really. Its skin was too smooth, too tight, like wax stretched over a skull. I screamed, stumbling back, my flashlight clattering to the floor. The face didn't move, just pressed against the glass, its breath fogging the pain in slow, deliberate puffs. I grabbed my rifle from the wall, a .22 I kept for coyotes, and aimed it, shouting, "Get out!" My voice cracked, sounding small against the storm. The face stayed, its grin widening, its eyes locked on mine, unblinking. Then the power cut out, the cabin plunging into darkness except for the fire's dying glow. The tapping didn't stop. It moved, front window to side window, then to the back, circling the cabin like a predator. Tap. 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 I crouched by the fireplace, clutching the rifle, my breath coming in gasps. The firelight flickered, casting shadows that seemed to twist into that grin. I stayed there all night, listening as the tapping grew louder, more frantic, like it was trying to claw its way in. When dawn broke, gray and weak, the tapping stopped. I checked the front window, my legs shaking. Scratched into the glass, deep enough to catch my fingernail, were the words, "I see you." I called Ranger Tom, a park ranger I'd met at the general store in town. He was a gruff guy, ex-military, who'd seen his share of weirdness in the woods. I told him about the handprints and scratches, leaving out the face. I wasn't ready to sound crazy. He drove out that afternoon, his Jeep crunching through the snow. He checked the cabin, frowning at the window scratches. "Kids, maybe," he said, but his voice lacked conviction. There were no tracks, no tire marks, nothing to explain how anyone got out here. He promised to patrol the area, but as he left, he glanced back, uneasy. 2 days later, he called me, his voice low. Someone had trashed his own cabin, windows smashed, handprints smeared in mud. "Be careful, Dan," he said. I stopped sleeping, my eyes gritty from staring into the dark. The handprints multiplied, covering every window, sometimes forming shapes, circles, spirals, things that hurt to look at. The tapping came every night, always at 3 a.m., circling the cabin. I started seeing the face in my dreams, its grin stretching wider, whispering my name in a voice like rustling leaves. I'd wake to scratches on my floor, long gouges that weren't there before. My trail camera stopped working, its lens cracked like someone had punched it. I went to town, a 20-mile drive to Keene Valley, and asked around at the diner. An old woman, Agnes, a local with deep-set eyes, overheard me talking about the handprints. She pulled me aside, her hands cold and bony. "You're on bad land," she said. She told me about a massacre in the 1700s, where settlers and Iroquois clashed near my cabin. The survivors spoke of a smiling spirit that watched from the trees, driving men mad. Hunters still avoided the area, calling it the Grinning Hollow. Agnes gave me a pouch of sage and told me to burn it, but her eyes said it wouldn't help. I burned the sage, choking on the smoke, but the tapping only got louder, mocking me. One night, I heard a new sound, scratching, like nails dragging across the roof. I climbed to the loft, shining my flashlight through the skylight. The face was there, pressed against the glass, its eyes boring into me. It spoke, its voice muffled but clear, mimicking Sophie's voice. "Daddy, let me in." I screamed, falling off the ladder, my ankle twisting. The voice laughed, deep and wrong, fading into the wind. I found carvings in the woods the next day, trees marked with the same spirals from my windows, some fresh, some old and moss-covered. Deep in the forest, I stumbled on a clearing, a circle of stones around a rotted stump. Scratched into the stump was a face, grinning, its eyes gouged deep. I ran back, my breath burning, and packed a bag. I drove to Albany, crashing at a cheap motel, thinking city lights would keep it away. They didn't. Last week, I woke to tapping on my motel window. I pulled the curtains, and there it was, the face, grinning through the glass, its teeth sharper now. I moved to an apartment downtown, a high-rise with security, but last night, I heard it again. Tap. 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 I looked out my 10th floor window, and it was there, floating outside, its grin splitting its face. My mirrors are covered now, but I see it in every reflection, my coffee mug, my phone screen, my own eyes. I'm posting this because I'm out of options. It's not a prank or a dream. It's real, and it wants me. What is it? How do I stop it? Nitel88's post stopped cold after that. Their account is gone, like it was erased. Some Redditors think Daniel was losing it, haunted by his own guilt over Sophie. Others swear by Agnes's story, saying the grinning hollow spirit never lets go. Have you ever seen something outside your window you couldn't explain? Drop it in the comments, I'm reading every one. Smash that like button if you're still here, because the final story, it's going to crawl inside your head and stay there. Don't look away. Story 5, The Voice in My Head. Our final story comes from r/nosleep, posted by a user called SilentScreams23. They titled it, The Voice in My Head. My name's Emma, and I'm 29. I'm a nurse at St. Mary's Hospital in Rochester, working night shifts in the ER, stitching wounds and holding hands through pain. It's grueling, but it's my life, or it was, until 3 months ago, when everything I thought I knew about my mind started to unravel. 2 years ago, my younger sister, Lily, took her own life. She was 24, bright, with a laugh that could light up a room. But she hid her darkness, her depression, and I didn't see it. I was too busy saving strangers to notice my own sister slipping away. Her note said, "I'm sorry, Emma. It's too loud." I didn't understand what she meant. Not then. I live in a small house in a quiet Rochester suburb, a fixer-upper I bought after Lily's death to keep my hands busy. It's nothing special, peeling paint, creaky hardwood floors, a kitchen that smells faintly of burnt toast no matter how much I scrub. My bedroom's a mess of medical textbooks, empty coffee cups, and Lily's old stuff, a scarf, a locket, a journal I can't bring myself to read. The house feels heavy, like it's grieving with me, its windows rattling even when there's no wind. I thought it was my imagination, my guilt playing tricks. Then the voice started. It began in September, during a string of sleepless nights. I'd collapse into bed after a 12-hour shift, my body aching, and just as I'd drift off, I'd hear it, a faint hum, like a radio tuned to a dead station. At first, I thought it was the fridge buzzing or my neighbor's TV through the thin walls. But it was too close, too, inside. A whisper, low and raspy, calling my name. Emma. It was a man's voice, rough like gravel, but soft, like he was standing at my bedside. I'd jolt awake, heart pounding, scanning the dark. Nothing. Just the hum of my ceiling fan and the distant bark of a dog. I told myself it was exhaustion. Night shifts mess with your head, and I was barely sleeping, living on coffee and guilt. But the voice didn't stop. Every night, it grew clearer, more insistent. Emma. Emma. I started checking my house, locking doors, peeking under the bed like a kid scared of monsters. My coworkers noticed I was off, bags under my eyes, hands shaking during sutures. My friend Rachel, a therapist at the hospital, said it was stress, maybe PTSD from Lily's death. She pushed me to see a doctor, so I did. Dr. Patel, a neurologist with kind eyes and a clipped accent, ran tests, EEG, MRI, blood work. He diagnosed tinnitus, a ringing in the ears, and prescribed sleeping pills. I took them, but the voice laughed, a low chuckle that vibrated in my skull. It wasn't tinnitus. It was alive, and it knew me. By October, it started giving orders. Open the window, it whispered one night, as rain drummed against the glass. I ignored it, pulling my blanket tighter, but the voice grew louder, angrier. Open it. My windows rattled, like something was shaking the frame. I stumbled to the window, heart racing, and checked the lock. It was fine, but my breath fogged the glass, and for a second, I swore I saw my reflection blink. I stopped sleeping in my bedroom, crashing on the couch with the TV on, hoping the noise would drown it out. It didn't. The voice followed, seeping through the static of late-night infomercials. Look under the bed, it said. Check the closet. I'd lie there, frozen, my pulse hammering, as the commands grew stranger. Cut your hair. Write my name. I started losing time, minutes, sometimes hours, where I'd blink and find myself standing in the kitchen, a knife in my hand, no memory of getting there. I bought a recorder app for my phone, desperate to prove I wasn't crazy. I'd set it up by my couch, letting it run all night. The first few recordings were useless, static, my own snores, the hum of the fridge. But one morning, I played back a file and my blood ran cold. The voice was there, clear as day, whispering, "Let me in, Emma." Over and over, like a chant. I played it for Rachel during a coffee break, my hands shaking. She frowned, said it was just white noise, and suggested I see a psychiatrist. I checked the file again, the voice was gone, replaced by a low buzz. I didn't understand. It was there. I heard it. By November, the voice wasn't just at night. It followed me to work, whispering through the ER's fluorescent hum. "She's going to die," it said as I treated a car crash victim, a young woman with Lily's eyes. She survived, but I couldn't shake the voice's glee, like it enjoyed my fear. I started seeing things, shadows flitting in my peripheral vision, too tall to be human, gone when I turned. My mirrors were the worst. I'd catch my reflection moving wrong, a fraction of a second off, its lips curling into a smile I didn't make. I found Lily's journal in a box one night, buried under her scarf. I hadn't touched it since her funeral, too raw to face her words. But the voice whispered, "Read it." My hands trembled as I opened it. Lily's handwriting was messy, frantic. Pages were filled with sketches, spirals, eyes, a figure with no face. One entry, dated a week before she died, read, "It's in my head, Emma. It's so loud. It wants me to let it in." My stomach churned. She'd heard it too. The last page had one word, scrawled in red ink, "Help." I went to Dr. Patel again, begging for answers. He ordered more tests, suggested schizophrenia, but the scans were clean. He prescribed antipsychotics, but they made the voice angrier, screaming my name so loud my ears bled. I stopped taking them, terrified of what it might do next. I confided in Rachel, who listened but kept her distance, her eyes wary. She gave me a book on grief, saying I was projecting Lily's death. I wanted to believe her, but the voice wasn't my imagination. It was real, and it was growing stronger. I started researching local legends, desperate for answers. Rochester had stories, old tales of a whisperer, a spirit that preyed on the grieving, slipping into their minds like a parasite. A 19th century diary from a local archive mentioned a woman who heard voices after her son died, claiming they drove her to walk into the Genesee River. Her last words were, "It's inside me." I found similar stories, a widower in the 1920s, a teenager in the 80s, all hearing voices, all ending in tragedy. Each mentioned mirrors, reflections that moved wrong. The voice changed in December. It wasn't just commands anymore, it was personal. "You failed her," it hissed, as I stared at Lily's photo. "You let her die." I'd sob, clutching her locket, the guilt crushing me. One night, it said, "Go to the mirror." I don't know why I listened, but I did, like a puppet on strings. I stood in my bathroom, the fluorescent light buzzing, staring at my reflection. The voice whispered, "Look closer." I leaned in, my breath fogging the glass. My reflection blinked when I didn't, its eyes darkening, its mouth stretching into a grin that wasn't mine. I screamed, smashing the mirror with my fist, glass cutting my knuckles. The voice laughed, a sound like breaking bones, and followed me everywhere. "I'm inside you," it said, and I felt it, a twitch under my skin, like fingers brushing the inside of my skull. I stopped going to work, ignoring Rachel's calls. My house became a prison, the walls pulsing with the voice's rhythm. I covered every mirror, but it didn't help. I'd see it in my coffee mug, my phone screen, the polished kettle, always that grin, those black eyes. Last week, I woke with blood on my hands, my bedroom mirror shattered, glass scattered across the floor. Written in red on the shards, smudged like finger paint. I'm here. I don't know where the blood came from, my knuckles were healed, no cuts anywhere. The voice is constant now, laughing, singing, mocking. It says I'll meet it soon, that I'm becoming it. Last night, I saw Lily in my dream, but it wasn't her. Her face was wrong, her eyes black, her voice the same as the one in my head. You're me now, she said, and I woke screaming, my throat raw. I'm posting this because I'm out of time. It's not a voice, it's alive, and it's eating me from the inside. I don't know how to fight it. Has anyone heard it? What do I do? Silent Screams 23's account went dark after that post. No updates, no trace. Some Redditors think Emma was battling mental illness, her grief twisting her mind. Others believe the whisperer is real, a thing that feeds on pain, jumping from soul to soul. Have you ever heard a voice you couldn't explain, something that knew your name? Share your story in the comments, I'm dying to read them. Hit that like button if you survived this nightmare, and brace yourself for the outro. It's time to wrap up, if you can handle it. And there it is, the end of our journey through Reddit's darkest corners. 5 stories, 5 nightmares, each one clawing its way into your mind, refusing to let go. If you've made it through all 4 hours of this descent into terror, you're braver than most. These tales, the faceless man in the Polaroid, the scratching in the walls, the hitchhiker who knew too much, the grinning face at the window, and the voice that burrows inside your head, they aren't just words on a screen. They're shadows, lingering in the quiet moments when you're alone, when the house is too still, when you catch a glimpse of something in the mirror that shouldn't be there. And if you're still here, still breathing, smash that like button to prove you survived this marathon of terror. It's your badge of courage, your way of saying you faced the darkness and came out the other side. Subscribe and ring that bell for more true scary stories every week. I drop new chills every Friday, and you don't want to miss what's coming next. Trust me, we're just getting started. If you're hungry for more, check out my other videos, there's a playlist of Reddit horrors waiting to keep you up all night. Share this video with a friend, someone brave enough to dive in with you, and see if they can handle it. But before you go, one last thing. Take a look around your room right now. Check the corners, the windows, the mirrors. Is it just you, or is something watching? Maybe it's been here the whole time, listening to these stories with you, waiting for the candle to go out. Thanks for watching, and good luck sleeping. Some stories aren't just true, they're out there, in the dark, closer than you think.